Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Clayton Thomas has a unique background in integrative therapies and research science that started in animal health. With a humanities degree with a focus on communications, business, and kinesiology, his broad studies have allowed for a history that includes research and formula development. Clayton is happily married to Dr. Christina Ram, and they have 4 children, 4 dogs, and a cat in the Nashville area. Clayton has served as a business development specialist in every aspect of wellness: sales, distribution, formulation, creation, consulting, and manufacturing, and is now the architect of an entirely new method of business with the Root social sharing community platform. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. You heard it in the introduction. We are going to do a deep dive on all things health, all things business. And I love this saying, whoever said that business wasn't personal never owned or ran a business. Everything is personal. Everything is health. And let's face it, at Deep Wealth, we are the biggest proponents that our first wealth is our health. And that's what we're going to be talking about today with a fascinating individual. Clayton, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. I'm really excited about today for all that you bring to the table and all that you represent. But let me stop it right there, because there's always a story behind the story. So Clayton, what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
No, Jeffrey, thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun little journey. My story actually in business and such actually started when I was 2. I was fortunate to be born and raised into an integrated veterinary practice. Through that, I got to see both aspects, as you were touching on, the importance of health in animal and human, but also the business aspect. And a lot of my business philosophies were formed from watching what my parents did in clinic, of really understanding the most important investments you're going to make in any aspect are in people. So any business, regardless of what sector you are, what type of business you are, how large you are, we all have the same key pinpoint of what we need to do and what makes us successful. Mm-hmm. And that's service to your customer. And if you take care of them, they will take care of you. But then growing up in an environment where everything revolved around health and wellness and performance, and understanding that all of our issues actually come back to a same point, a same etiology, and addressing that. And then going through school, going through college, starting my business life, and watching how the journey actually blended what I was raised in, and then being able to build different businesses around health and wealth and finance, and how they're always interconnected, as you hit on. And it's through that process and through that journey that's led us here. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business person, if you're successful in anything that you do, many people will look at it, and the adage speaks for itself, that an overnight success is decades in the making. And I think that's the important part to understand, is that if you're putting in the work, when you get to achieve success, you have to appreciate the fact, even if other people are looking at you going, oh, you did this in a couple of years and you're so successful. How did you do it? It's understanding the decades of preparation, the decades of pain, the decades of failure, the work it took to actually lay the foundation to build whatever infrastructure you have around it. And that comes with the investment in yourself. It comes with the investment in others. The greatest lesson I think you could teach any entrepreneur now is don't wait to do the things that you know you need to do until you make it, right? So you see so often that people will work and sacrifice to attain some semblance of financial success. When they achieve that financial success, they want to buy back their health. They're willing to invest the time it takes to get their health back after they've done all these things to gain the financial success. And many times, and most of the time, that check's already been billed out and it's already been cashed, and you're not able to do it. So take the time to invest in your own health, your own well-being early, and it will pay greater dividends than you ever imagined, because a healthy body, a healthy mind is going to allow one to create a healthy business.
Clayton, as you're talking about this, it's a famous quote out there. I really love it. It's from the Dalai Lama. We sacrifice our health in order to make wealth, and then we sacrifice our wealth in order to get back our health. And we really have it backwards. And to your point, by the time we have that wealth at the expense of our health, oftentimes it's too late. But before we get there, I mean, you as a person, an entrepreneur, a thought leader, a founder, it's incredibly interesting. Even the name for the company, Root, and the Rootiverse, as it's known out there. How did that happen? Did you wake up one day and say, let me start this company? It's going to be all things health, but business ventures combined, and getting the best out of people through natural, healthy, non-medicinal or prescription drug kind of ways? I mean, what's going on with that?
It was actually really part of the entire journey, of where I grew up, but then I grew up in a veterinary practice, but then being fortunate enough to grow up in the Seattle area, or south of Seattle. And I was able to watch the growth and development of a couple unique industries of when Amazon first started. And you had the concept of a company using an online mechanism, a direct-to-consumer sales model that initially was selling used books. And they provided a service. And then consumers did what we do naturally. If we find something that we like, we share it. It's our nature. And we do it, if it's authentic, we do it without being motivated by any external source to do so. And it is that single process that's created trillion-dollar market valuations for companies. And companies have not done the one thing that I thought was most important, which was investing in those who create value. I looked at what Amazon had done, and then I did a really deep dive of being fortunate enough to watch the birth of social media and watch the birth of AI in many aspects back in the 90s, right? And looking at how the networks are all connected. Everything that we do, every aspect of business is network marketing, because we're already connected. We're 6 degrees from 6.5 billion people. If that's the case, then you just have to understand of how do you tap into a network? How do you tap into an individual's influence? And how do you teach people that their influence is more valuable than they understand? I looked at other industries like the direct selling industry, network marketing, multi-level marketing, and some of the principles that come from that industry. And it's very, very basic of understanding that if you put value on, people will create value for you. And if you're willing, then as a company, and this is where the business of mine took over, as a company, if you have the goods, if you have a service, you have a product, you have a solution. And fortunately for me, I outkicked my coverage. My wife is a literal savant and holding multiple PhDs, a PsyD and EDD, the postdoc from Harvard, and 20 years in biotech. It was her background that allowed us to create the solutions. And because of what she was made to do and what she's able to create and what she has created, the confidence in knowing that we had the ability to create the outcomes that would make sure that our customers would be well taken care of allowed me to be confident in creating a business model that also allowed us to do what we wanted to do. And that was take care of people, right? So as we hit on, the two most important components are health and wealth. As a business, I wanted to make sure that we were supporting those that supported us as best as possible. So I basically reverse engineered marketing, because every company, every business is going to spend money on advertising and marketing. You have to. Usually 40 to 50, sometimes a little bit more than 50% of your revenue is going to be reinvested into marketing and advertising to continue to grow. But because we're already connected and the network is already built for consumers, that I didn't want to put money into the beast per se, to go to Facebook, to go to Instagram, to go to Google, to go to the large platforms that already control the data, right? Mm-hmm. And they've been built as mechanisms to farm massive amounts of data to then turn data around and either sell it to companies or sell it to advertisers or sell it to entities that want that information, connected all the people. So they're farming us for our behavior. And if that's the case and everybody's already connected, you can use the platforms to just go direct to the people. And then if you have a service or if you have a product that is of value, the people are already connected. So just take your advertising money and put it into them. And that theory, while a little bit disruptive, and many of my colleagues in the financial space thought I was absolutely nuts, when I was constructing it, and especially launching a company on February 2nd of 2020, right? Of thinking, okay, now's the perfect time to launch a new business. And so launching it right at the start of COVID and lockdowns, but it provided a unique environment because a lot of people had some free time and they started to pay attention to the value of their health and how it might be important to protect yourself. And what happened is we went from zero to launch in the United States to 27 countries in 30 days. And then it was a matter of playing catch up a little bit to make sure that you could build the logistical infrastructure to support the organic growth that was taking place. But we've watched the company triple 3 years in a row in sales revenue, and it's all done organically. It's all done from consumers just doing what we do naturally. And being able, I was looking at the numbers a week ago of over the last 2.5 years, put roughly $40 million back into people's pockets for the value that they've helped to create the company is really unique. And so the concepts really came from experience, came from taking the time to understand my market of where we were going to go, who our client was going to be, and how we could be of service to them. And so if you invest in people, they'll invest in you. That's been the goal.
And so investing in people, I want to take it even higher, investing in society, which is really what you're doing. Because one of the core philosophies of the company, and lots of people say this, you say this, but you're doing this, cure the cause. 3 words, they say so much. And from my data point of one, this is what is sorely missing in the established medical system. I'm not pointing fingers, and the traditional doctors do an incredible job with what they have to work with, but there's still a large gap. So cure the cause. What's going on with that?
It really stemmed from having the time to understand the etiology of looking at what the underlying causes were. 18 years ago, when I started going down this path, when my philosophy did a 180-degree turn of initially growing up as an athlete, focusing on nutrition and performance and supplementation and lifestyle. And then 18 years ago, having that turned upside down when I began to understand that our health, our well-being, our performance actually has nothing to do with what we put in, but everything of what we take out. You can think of the human body just like an apartment complex or a house or a city, that if you don't take the trash out, if you don't have a sanitation industry, if you have your own personal home and you're not constantly removing the trash, you are going to become overburdened with pestilence very quickly. And that's actually the problem in the human body, is we've become so polluted from the time we were conceived that these toxins, whether it's toxic heavy metals like mercury, lead, aluminum, cesium, strontium, gadolinium, things like glyphosate that have been used, Roundup and weed killer, and desiccants in the food industry, and all of these other fire retardants and different chemicals and pollutants and forever chemicals that are becoming so prominent in conversations. All of these chemicals are actually the cause of what's destroying us. I'd initially found a meta-analysis that was published by the World Health Organization in 1970 that was looking at data going back to the 1950s. What was proven is that just looking at mercury alone, and you think of mercury, you go, oh, I don't have mercury, but we have amalgam fillings, we have the vaccines, that we've had for 50 years that we've been putting in people. You've got mercury in the environment, depending on where you live, it's in the air, it's in the food supplies, it's in the soil. And mercury alone is the primary cause of virtually all chronic degenerative disease. And that was published in 1970. If you know what the cause is, the etiology happens to come down to toxicity. that our bodies are poisoned. And then if you start to address that, and if you start to clean up the mess, and if you cure the cause, if you remove what's causing the issue, it's the same thing of looking at kids in school, right? If you have a bunch of kindergartners or young kids and you have one child that is acting out, that is causing a disruption in the class, you don't punish the entire class. You just remove the child that's the problem and allow them to be corrected constructively. And when you remove that disruption, the rest of the class finds homeostasis, it finds balance. The body's the same way. As you start to slowly remove what's causing all the problems and you allow the body the assistance in doing that, the recovery process is actually pretty quick, but it allows us to become what we've been made to be, which is well beyond even what we perceive we're capable of. And so while the allopathic industry has been built upon the premise of identifying symptomology, making a diagnosis, and prescribing accordingly based on symptoms, why not just remove what's causing the symptom? Because if you don't have symptoms, you don't have an issue. And if you remove what's causing the symptoms, then the solution's pretty easy.
And so, Clayton, speaking of the solution, part of the problem is really as a society, and at least I'm speaking in North America, as a society, we're almost like that frog in boiling water, as the saying goes, that slowly over time, most people's health has degenerated and they don't really realize it. And so when they wake up and they feel aches and pains and groggy and brain fog and they're lacking energy and 2 o'clock in the afternoon comes and it might as well be 2 a.m. and they don't really know what hit them, but they say to themselves these narratives, these really lies, these myths that we tell ourselves. This is what happens when you get older, or this is quote unquote normal. Everyone else I know is feeling like this as they go to their medicine cabinet and pop who knows how many prescription drugs, and the cycle just gets worse. And studies are coming out. I'm rounding up here is 88%, but I'm going to say 9 out of 10 Americans either have a metabolic disease or have one that's just around the corner and they don't even know it. And so as a society, for the amount that we spend on healthcare relative to the rest of the world, we should be at the top of the list, but we're at the bottom of the list. So for that listener who's saying, yeah, Jeffrey, that's me. You just described me, but I don't know what to do. Where do I turn? Because I go to my doctor at my annual physical. She spends 5 minutes with me. You know, the doctor in 5 minutes has me in and out of the office and says, everything's okay. But they don't know what to do, where to turn. So for that listener that we're speaking to, and there's many of them, who's running the business, changing lives, burning the candle at both ends, they're saying to themselves that they'll sleep when they die. All the myths that they're told that really aren't correct, but they don't know that yet. Where do they start on themselves, on their health journey?
It's interesting because you're going to find the solutions in the garden versus the bottom of the bottle. But then it's understanding the aspects of bioscience engineering. The nice part is my wife is a literal biotech savant, having a background in nanotechnology and bioscience engineering from Harvard and spending 20 years in biotech and pharma at the medical science and clinical science levels of the largest and most successful pharmaceutical and biotech companies in the world, but also being an individual that had Lyme disease when she was 19, lost her memory, has had a brain tumor, a spine tumor, multiple kinds of skin cancer, lost kids to cancer. Our 19-year-old had cancer when he was 2. She's been through the journey and the gamut of understanding the game, and she's had access to everything that the pharmaceutical and biotech industries could offer. Yet when she needed to take care of herself, she went natural. And the understanding that our country, the United States, is unique because it's really controlled by programming, right? And when I say programming, it's not just the advertising and what you see on TV, what you get on the radio, what you get in podcasts, but also what you get in the educational system, that the entire medical schools are predicated on teaching doctors this prescriptive mantra. The old adage of the Hippocratic Oath, I think, is just that. It's hypocritic, right? That most physicians, they go to school with the intention of figuring out how they can help people and make money doing it. But they are locked into a process that if you don't follow the process, you will not graduate, right? And so you're taught to play by a specific set of rules. And I think it's the one thing for consumers and the one thing for entrepreneurs to understand is that their model is not predicated on your health, right? Healthcare really doesn't involve health, and it doesn't involve them caring. It is the largest business in this country, and it revolves around money, right? Because all of these countries, whether they're hospital systems, which own most physicians or control most physicians, the pharmaceutical industry, the health insurance industry, all three of these, there are very, very few public, or not public, but private companies. They're all public. They're all publicly traded, which means their sole individual job is the generation of revenue and profitability. So all of their decision making is actually predicated on that premise. It's the hard part of looking at it from a CEO's perspective, because it actually breeds a level of sociopathy that is not conducive to being part of a health caring system. And when you understand that, there are times and place for surgery, there are times and place for pharmacology, but it's also important to understand that everything that we've needed has been provided to us, right? So you have to make sure that you're looking at what nature's provided you first. And this was what I learned in growing up in veterinary medicine. Virtually every issue that your pets have are due to their environment and their diet, right? If that's the case, you have to go back to the same premise in people, because we are of like kind with a plant. We are of like kind with every animal on the planet. We're genetically almost identical, right? And so we know that it's all lifestyle, it's all diet, it's all environmental exposure. And you're not going to find that from the pharmaceutical industry, because the pharmaceutical industry and the medical establishment is built on creating revenue off of long-term issues, right? If they came out and said, great, we just solved cancer, there's $1 trillion lost. You have to think, okay, what causes cancer? The published literature shows that it's environmental toxins and environment that causes the cascade that leads to these issues. If you address those things, if you don't have the cause, you're not going to have the problem. If you cure the cause, as we hit on, you're not going to have the issues. But then in an environment that is so predicated on marketing and advertising, you have to figure out who you can trust. Education and authenticity and the simplicity of having the approach, giving people access to the type of people that have the ability to create the solutions, and doing the research, right? And we live in a time now where there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of marketing, because there's a lot of money being spent on the term wellness and health, right? People want to be able to perform well. We need to be able to perform well. We all desire to attain greatness, right? We're made in that light. We're made in that image, yet we're burdened to the point where it's not something that we typically ever get to see. And I think that's why sports are so fun to watch, because we get to see glimpses of what that looks like. And we always want to talk about who's the GOAT. We don't want to talk about mediocrity. We don't want to talk about Will Perdue or what Steve Kerr did with the Bulls. We want to talk about what Jordan and Pippen did, even though they were all on the same team. And we want to see greatness. Every time that I watch Secretariat run the Belmont, I watch the replay, I cry. Every time. I've seen it 100+ times, but every time I watch it, I cry, because it's the closest that we've probably ever seen in athletics to what perfection looks like. And in business, we try to apply that same aspect. We all need to be the best versions of ourselves to be as successful as we can. To be successful in business, you have to do the research. You have to be constantly analyzing markets, to whether it's understanding, supply chain management, or how your business is functioning, who your customers are, where you can find other opportunities. The same thing goes from your health and performance. It takes some work to do research. We've tried to simplify that because of what we've been able to do and put everything in one place that's really needed to provide performance, because of what Dr. Christina Rahm has done with what she's created. It's not complex in how to solve the problem. Now, you have to be a savant in order to do it right, which is what she's been able to do. But this process doesn't have to be complex. You just have to be able to find the right sources, trust them. And as a business, then you have to be willing to spend the money to track the data, to show the outcomes, to prove the efficacy. That way you can show consumers, look, this is what happens when you do this. If you have this, you do this, you get this. If you have X, you add Y, you get Z. And that's one of the biggest things that separates us, is because of her background coming from biotech and some of mine being spent in different aspects of the healthcare industry. We've put together the research registries to actually track outcomes and have the data, because it's the same thing that the pharmaceutical industry and biotech industry does, that they do in research, that wellness companies, a health company, needs to be doing, and they have to be doing the same thing, because it's the only way that they can get to the same level to play on that playing field. And if you don't do it, you're not going to be trusted.
So Clayton, let me ask you this. You've done a terrific deep dive for us on, okay, here's where it came from. Here's our philosophy. Here's how we're different. And at Deep Wealth, we call those X factors. X factors are areas that we are world class in. We're in a blue ocean. We're in a category of our own. But let me ask you this. You are in an industry, it's a multi-billion dollar with a B industry. You're up against titans of business, big zeros in the bank account, many, many zeros. Established. They have all the teams up and running, marketing, sales, all those other things that are going on, strategy. And here you are. Let's go back to when you started as an upstart. It's an idea. The world shut down. Everyone is worried about their health and other kinds of things are going on. There's a lot of noise, and you dip your toe in the water in a very big way, and you begin to create a market disruption. So when you look back now, and it's been a very short tenure since you ventured out and began all these things, for our audience, are there some tactics and strategies that worked really well for you that, looking back, you would recommend for our listeners? Hey, this worked really well. Maybe you want to think about it. Here's what it did for us.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, the most important thing is any business in this environment where everybody's connected, whether you take our approach or not, you have to provide quality, right? Quality is everything, whether it's a quality of experience, the quality of outcomes. If you don't take care of people, they will destroy you. But if you take really good care of your customers, you take care of people, they will carry you. You can look at it with any restaurant, right? You open a restaurant, which I wouldn't recommend for most people to do now. It's a good hobby. If you open a restaurant and you have a concept of having great food, and you have people come in and your service sucks, but you have pretty good food, you're not going to be in business very long, because people will tell their friends, hey, it was a really good meal, but the service is terrible. Don't go. You can go elsewhere. You can have similar food and better service. And so you're in trouble that way. No matter how much advertising you do, the people that have already had an experience, because negative, it's the interesting part with human nature, right? Negative experiences are more commonly shared than positive. So you've got to take care of people. You've got to put as much into that experience as possible. And the second part that's been proven successful for us because of our scope was the willingness just to double down on the human behavioral component of walking into an environment where we are walking amongst titans, right? And we started out as the guppy, and not just being in our own little fishbowl and not being in a pond, but jumping in the river that fed into the Gulf, which is part of the ocean. And then figuring out, okay, here's how we're going to get our little piece. Here's what we do. But then as the river flowed and we went with the river and we allowed the experiences that we were creating, and we rewarded our customers for doing what we do naturally and allowing them to see that the company not only values them for what we want to provide them, but we also value them for what they create for us. And the aspect of affiliate marketing for any business, I think if you do it like I do, and you've built an entire algorithmic fintech model around the philosophy, or if you figure out how to incorporate some semblance of affiliate marketing into your business model, and you can figure out how much you want to allocate towards rewarding that behavior, you can make an absolute killing financially by providing a good service and allowing and rewarding people to do what we normally do. Because you have millions of people that are looking for that. Even if it's a restaurant, you say, hey, you know what? You tell your friends, they come in, we'll give you points. You can use that to get a free meal. If you come and consume with us, you get stars and you can get free coffee or what have you. It's the greatest investment you can make.
And when you mention affiliate marketing, and that's been a market disruptor for you, that's been a game changer, one of your X factors, even a Rembrandt, as we'll say here at Deep Wealth, that you're uniquely world-class in. That said, for many people, when they hear the word affiliate marketing or the term affiliate marketing, not from you, But from others before you, there's a negative connotation. And I can just imagine the listener saying, what? Affiliate marketing? That has such a bad rap out there. I could never put my business through that. But you're saying, hey, you know what? If you adopt it in the right way, if you approach it from the right perspective and you execute well, it can really move the dial for you. So for affiliate marketing, what would be some strategies or tactics that a business owner could really deploy that makes a difference?
No, you're dead on that the language is something that makes people cringe because of, as I mentioned, like the direct selling industry, the multi-level marketing industry, the pyramid schemes. When those are brought up where people hear something conceptually that sounds like it, there's such a negative connotation because, the MLM industry and such is much like socialism and communism and it's very closely related to prostitution. But if you talk about the concepts of socialism, we could have a conversation and the idea and concepts behind socialism make sense. We could probably come to an agreement that this would actually be a really good thing for society. But then there's a problem because people get involved and politicians get involved and power gets involved and money gets involved. And then those things become bastardized. And that's been the problem with those concepts is business people look at it and go, that's a dirty industry. I would never do that. Right. It just isn't the right way to do things. But if you take the key concept of what we learned in kindergarten, that show and tell is absolutely amazing. And you're willing to throw out all of the trash, right? You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but you throw out all of the scum and you're left with the baby and the good part of the bathwater and go, okay, I can work with these things. You then figure out how you can apply that to what you're doing. And it can be a major part of your business. It can be a small part of your business and to go along with other methods. And you'll find that it's very beneficial because it gives you means of addressing the value that's created from those that choose to affiliate with you, right? And that's the key is it's your customers. The affiliate side of affiliate marketing has nothing to do with the business owner. It has everything to do with the people that value what you provide them. They want to affiliate with you, right? And through that, if you understand the value in the relationship, you can create a lot of value with them. They will create value for you. You can create additional value for them, and it becomes perpetual. So it's really just getting rid of the aspect of hearing the language and thinking, oh, that's bad, because most business owners had their friends tell them that they probably never should have done what they were doing in business anyway. Had they listened to them, they would have been like, I'm just going to keep doing the old status quo and I wouldn't be as happy. But when you look at the concepts and you're willing to change concepts to fit what you're doing, that's entrepreneurialism, then you're going to be able to find something that will aid you in becoming more successful. In this time of the world that we're in, if you're not willing to disrupt, if you're not willing to innovate, you are not going to be here.
And so, Clayton, let's bring this full circle now, because we've talked personal, we've talked business. Let's talk disruption that you're talking about, market disruption, personal disruption. I'm going to put something out there and you can tell me, hey, Jeffrey, you're so far off base. Or yeah, Jeffrey, there is really something to what you're saying. And that's this, that for all of us, if we want to go out there and, like you say on your website or in the company, create greatness. If we want to create greatness in the company, we want to have a market disruption, we want to change lives, solve a painful problem. We're not going to be able to do that unless we can have a personal disruption within ourselves. So in other words, if we don't get it right on the personal side, the ability to get it right on the business side will either take longer or perhaps not even happen at all. What are your thoughts on that?
No, you're dead on that you have to invest in yourself before you can invest in anything else. It goes back to the health conversation of if you're not healthy, you're not going to make healthy decisions. You're not going to have healthy relationships. You're not going to have a healthy home life. You're not going to have a healthy business. And all of those, it's the true holistic approach to business. If you talk to anybody that's been uber successful, or if we could dig up Steve Jobs right now and say, Steve, you know what, if you could put money anywhere right now, where would you put it? And he'd go, you know what, I'd love to have my health back. And when you look at that, knowing that if you're an entrepreneur, you're typically high functioning, our brains are our greatest asset. And brain fog, not being able to have the processing power that we desire, the stress, the lack of sleep being absolutely crucial in this whole thing. If I could give one piece of insight for any entrepreneur, and I've mentioned this in so many different business interviews, the greatest asset that you can do for your health has nothing to do while you're awake. It has everything to do when you sleep. And if you're getting into deep REM sleep, and that's the true pathway to creation, to recovery, to regeneration, to problem solving. I don't even dream much anymore because I create my dreams while I'm awake. I problem solve and plan while I'm asleep. And it's understanding those health pathways that are so important, of taking the correlation between what you need while you're awake, how those same components actually apply to getting deep, restful sleep, and how your body actually functions to regenerate. Because all regeneration, all recovery, all of that happens during restful sleep. It doesn't happen while you're awake. So everything you want to do to work out and supplement properly, all of those things are then properly applied while you're sleeping. If you don't get into deep REM sleep, it doesn't work.
And so, Clayton, my takeaway from that, this is not a one size fits all. It's a system. It's perhaps complicated, perhaps not if you understand it. But going to our traditional doctor or medical system, which is very compartmentalized, everything's in a silo, we're likely not going to get to the root cause, which goes back to your whole philosophy of why you started the company, of curing the cause. And that, hey, you have to have a big picture understanding. And in many ways, just like in business, in the Deep Wealth 9-step roadmap, step number one, big picture. Hey, what's the big picture? What's going on in your industry, in your business? What could have you create a market disruption? What could have you go out of business, and everything else in between? And really what you're saying is, hey, it's not just as simple as popping a pill or a prescription or doing a particular exercise or eating a particular food. It's a whole systematic approach that goes into all of that. But for our listener who's saying, okay, Clayton, I hear you, but I feel so overwhelmed. I don't understand a lot of what's being said. I know I'm busy. I don't have a lot of time. Help me. Where would that person start? And I know at the start of the conversation, you said, Jeffrey, let's get the detoxification going first and foremost. Would it be detoxification? Would that be step number one? We need to detox?
That's the foundation, right? So really, depending upon the individual, that's where if you said, okay, I'm willing and I'm able or capable to do one thing, that's the foundation, is starting the cleanup process. You've got to have a clean slate, right? But if you want the best start, that's where the Trinity comes in. And there's symbolism in all of it, right? So many people use the movie The Matrix as a reference for living in this world that we live in, a matrix and whatnot. And you hear the conversations of red pills and blue pills and, all of this, but really there's only a gold pill. And when you take some of the concepts from that, even in Neo becoming awakened in his awakening process, it wasn't because he swallowed a pill. It was because he found Trinity. Then it was through finding Trinity that he was able to then go through the process of getting plugged in and having a bunch of light put on his pineal gland, which allowed him to, one of my favorite lines, no kung fu. That process. So everybody has their own journey. And I think the biggest part in business from a customer standpoint is building trust. If you don't have that experience, if you don't create the outcomes, you're not going to be trusted. And you have to have, just like milk in the grocery store, what are you going to provide as a foundation? For us, that's the clean slate standpoint. But if I was working with a high performer, I would say, great, here's the clinical case studies that we already have to support why I'm recommending you do this. But start with these three, start with the Trinity. You hit on the key word that explains all of it. And it's what makes business people successful. The most successful of us all in business know and have been able to use the one word you use so well. And from our previous conversations, in your success, at least that was the one word that resonated with me with your journey. And that's system. It's not a matter of, okay, we're going to do this way this time, and next time we're going to do it different, and then we're going to try something different. No, you learn to perfect a system, you learn to perfect a process, and you do it consistently. And you look and you tinker as you see outcomes, as you see changes, the system might change a little bit, but it is all about systems. And once you have those systems developed and you can prove them, that's where success comes in. We've seen that across the board. And in our 3 years, that's the key part, because we have the data, we have the proof, we have the systems in place. And then we provide the opportunity for our consumers and our customers to start wherever they choose within that system to say, okay, do you want to start here? Great. Start with one thing, get used to that. And then when you trust us, you trust the brand, you trust the products, you trust the outcome, then you can add on top of it. Or you say, great, I've done my analysis. I see that this is beneficial. This is what I want to work with to start with. And then you go from there. Everybody has their own starting point, because while we are all the same, we're all unique. And it's the important part of the system. The system is all the same, but the outcomes and the process are different for each individual.
Well said, Clayton. And perhaps part of the system, part of the process, I'll also put another word in there, another concept, really being education, to educate ourselves that, hey, our body is different. Let me get to know my body, because what works for Clayton isn't going to work necessarily for me or somebody else, but hey, this really works well for me, and throw that into the mix. And like you're saying, with the studies and understanding what's behind that can really make a big difference. But Clayton, let me ask you this. As much as I would love to go down these different health rabbit holes and these business rabbit holes and getting from A to Z that much quicker and moving the dial, we're bumping into some time and we're going into wrap-up mode. And it's a fun question. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So imagine now it's tomorrow morning, and Clayton, here's the fun part. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car there curbside, the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop on in, which you do. And you're now going to go to any point in your life. Clayton, as a young child, as a teenager, whatever point that would be, what would you tell your younger self in terms of life wisdom or life lessons? Or, hey, Clayton, do this, but don't do that. What would that sound like?
Go back and buy Bitcoin at 7 cents. That's when you were told about it. I remember when my buddy was telling me about it, this is going to change banking. I'm like, I got to wait. It's the interesting question of, you ask someone, you've been successful, what would you change? And it's the paradox of understanding the journey of, if you go back and you change something, how is that going to change the outcome? Right. And we look at, if I'd have to say, when getting out of college, I would tell my college self, take your student loans that you got, because I was on scholarship for a lot of what I did, and I got student loans to pay for some other stuff. And I had the idea when I got my student loans, because I was in college in 1997 and 96 and such, I had this idea to take my student loans and put it in this stock for this Google company that had just started. I was like, go back and you're like, yo, that's a good idea. You should probably do that. Honestly, if I was to go back to any point of being a teenager, being a college student, a young entrepreneur, honestly, I would go back and tell myself, just keep going. And you know what, you're gonna question some things along the way, but just watch what happens in the end. Right? Because I honestly look at where we are now, and I might tweak a couple things here or there, but as far as the process and the journey, it's like, don't change it, because I wouldn't want to change where I am now. I have 4 amazing kids. My wife is the hottest woman on the planet. She just met the Pope today. She's in Italy. She just met the Pope.
Nice.
It's crazy. So you look at all the success, you look at all those things, you go, okay, what would I change? I don't think I would change much, because everything that I endured, while some of it makes for great stories around the campfire, even that which you perceive to be negative, the trauma, the drama, those are what make you. It's the one thing that I'm trying to finish my book on this, because I've seen it in our community. I'll give you the premise for the takeaway. We're not born with a backpack, right? We are given one when we're kids to take stuff with us, but we're not born with it, right? So we're not made to carry a burden. We are made to have experience. We are made to have an opportunity to experience something, use it, experience it, process it, grow from it, and discard what is not needed. That's the same if you look at it in your health when you're exposed to a virus. Messenger RNA and RNA transcriptionase is designed to work with your immune system to break apart a virus, take what you can learn from it and discard the rest. And the same thing goes with life. You're going to experience things. You're going to experience trauma. You're going to experience stress. You're going to experience strife. You're going to experience success. All of those things are meant to be experienced. And those are what make you. And I teach my kids this because they talk about they're not my sperm. So when they do good things, they're my kids. When they do things I don't like, they're not mine. Because of the environments that they grew up in, they're like, this happened to me as a child. And I was abused as a child, or the experiences that my wife had from having a previous spouse that beat the snot out of her for 14 years and was horrible to her. And you look at that and you can make excuses for it. Mm-hmm. But if you go back and you look at history, the most deadly weapon still known happens to be the katana, the samurai sword. And when you understand what it takes to make that weapon, the fact that you take raw steel, a craftsman will look at it and go, could be something. And what do they do to make that? They take it and they throw it in the fire, and it's heated up in the hottest environment you can imagine. And they take it out and they pound it, and then they throw it back in the fire. And then they take it back out and they pound it and they throw it back in the fire. And through that process, you're either forged or you're destroyed. It is through this experience of life and all the little things, the things that we think should have never happened to us, or the things that we're like, man, I wish that didn't happen. It is all those experiences that forge us into the unique weapon that we are intended to be. We don't understand the process. We don't get to understand the path, the journey. That's why we get the walk. And we question the journey along the way because of the trials, the tribulations, what we have to endure. But typically, when you don't let those things break you and they forge you, you get to the point where you get to stop and pause and appreciate and look back and go, that's why. And that's really the part that I would never want to give up by going back and say, do this differently, because you're going to end up missing something that made you.
So really, I'm hearing you say, keep going, enjoy the journey. And then the third thing that I'll add is the events that got us to where we are. Maybe we look back and say, hey, you know what? Wasn't so pleasant, or was painful, or was negative, but that's who sculpted us. That's what formed us to make us who we are. And what's interesting, Clayton, you're in terrific company. If there's one theme with the question that I asked, is what you just mentioned, that a lot of guests would say, Jeffrey, I don't know if I would want to change anything. I really love where I am today. And if I change one, even the smallest detail, I may not be where I am today. So I think I would leave it exactly where it is, which is very similar to what you're saying. So terrific thinking. Great minds think alike, as the saying goes. Clayton, let me ask you this. For a listener who has questions, they want to learn more, where's the best place online?
You can find me on social media is probably the easiest way. LinkedIn. I think I have people that help me with LinkedIn, other social platforms, Facebook, Instagram. You can shoot me a message directly at clayton@therootbrands.com. I try to be as open as possible. And those are the easiest ways. And if you're in Nashville, come visit. You want to come to Nashville?
There you have it. Clayton's putting his own personal email address out there and saying, hey, if you're in Nashville, come over and say hello. I love that hospitality. And for our listeners, this is all in the show notes. It doesn't get any easier. It's a point and click. Clayton, it's official. This is a wrap. And as we absolutely love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
It was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.